Once upon a time, in a forest where the moonlight filtered through ancient oak trees like silver ribbons, there lived a firefly named Luna. She was small, no bigger than a dewdrop, with delicate wings that caught the starlight and a heart that beat with the rhythm of the evening breeze. Every night, Luna would rise from her resting place among the ferns and join her fellow fireflies in their celestial dance, her light blinking in perfect harmony with the thousands of others who painted the darkness with living constellations. Luna loved the feeling of her light pulsing from within her tiny body. It was warm and constant, like a whispered promise that she belonged to something greater than herself. The other creatures of the forest would pause in their nighttime wanderings just to watch the fireflies weave their patterns across the meadow, and Luna felt in those moments that she was part of something magical. But one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Luna awoke with a strange emptiness in her chest. The forest was stirring to life with its familiar twilight sounds. Crickets began their evening symphony, and somewhere in the distance an owl called out its first haunting note. Luna stretched her wings, preparing for another night of dancing among her companions. But when she tried to summon her glow, nothing happened. She concentrated harder, feeling for that warm spark that had always been there, as natural to her as breathing. Still nothing. Where her light should have pulsed, there was only shadow. Luna looked down at her body in disbelief, turning this way and that, hoping to catch even the faintest flicker. But she remained dark. Around her, other fireflies were beginning to rise, their lights blinking on one by one like stars appearing in the evening sky. They swirled upward in spirals and loops, calling to each other through their luminous language. But Luna stayed hidden among the fern fronds, her wings trembling. Panic fluttered in her chest. What was wrong with her? Had she done something to lose her light? Was it gone forever? The questions tumbled over each other in her mind, each one heavier than the last. She waited until all the other fireflies had drifted away toward the meadow before she finally emerged from her hiding place. The forest felt different in darkness, more vast and unknowable. Without her light, Luna felt invisible, as though she might disappear entirely into the shadows. For 3 nights, Luna hid. While her companions danced under the stars, she remained in the deepest, darkest corners of the forest where no one would notice her absence. She found a hollow in an old maple tree and made it her refuge, watching through a small knothole as the world continued without her. On the first night, she told herself it was temporary, that her light would return by morning. On the second night, she bargained with the darkness, promising to be a better firefly if only her glow would come back. On the third night, shame settled over her like a heavy mist. How could she face the others like this? How could she join their dance when she had nothing to contribute? Luna began to believe that without her light she was worthless. The thought wrapped around her like thorns, painful and persistent. She convinced herself that the other fireflies wouldn't want her around anymore, that she would only remind them of what could be lost, that her darkness would somehow dim their brightness. But hiding in the hollow of the maple tree, Luna discovered something unexpected. She could hear things she had never noticed before. The whisper of bat wings cutting through the air. The rustle of a mouse family settling down for the night. The gentle creaking of tree branches swaying in the wind. Without her own light to distract her, the world revealed its quieter secrets. Still, the loneliness was overwhelming. Luna missed the feeling of flying among her friends, missed the way the night air felt against her wings when she was part of something larger than herself. She knew she couldn't hide forever, but she also couldn't imagine returning without her light. On the fourth evening, as Luna sat in her hollow watching the sunset paint the sky, she made a decision. She would leave the forest and search for her light. Surely somewhere, somehow it could be found. Perhaps it had simply wandered away and was waiting for her to come looking. Perhaps there was someone wise enough to tell her how to call it back. The thought of leaving terrified her, but staying felt impossible. The forest had been her entire world, every leaf and stone familiar, but now it felt like a place where she no longer belonged. If she was going to be lost, she might as well be lost somewhere new, somewhere that held the possibility of answers. Luna waited until the other fireflies had begun their evening dance, their lights already twinkling in the meadow. Then she slipped out of her hollow and flew in the opposite direction. She travelled through parts of the forest she had only glimpsed from afar, past the old stone bridge where water burbled over smooth rocks, beyond the clearing where deer came to graze at dawn. The night stretched out before her, full of unknowns. Luna's wings ached with the effort of continuous flight, but she pushed forward, driven by hope and desperation in equal measure. The moon rose higher, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow, and Luna flew on, a small dark shape against the vastness of the night. By the time Luna reached the river, exhaustion had settled deep into her wings. She descended to rest on a flat stone near the water's edge, where the current moved slowly and the sound was soothing. The river reflected the moon perfectly, creating a pathway of light across its surface that seemed to lead somewhere distant and unreachable. Luna sat very still, watching the water flow past.
it occurred to her that the river was beautiful, even in darkness, that its movement and sound created something lovely, even without light. But the thought brought little comfort. A river was supposed to be dark and mysterious. A firefly was supposed to glow. As she sat there, feeling sorry for herself, Luna noticed a small turtle making its way along the riverbank. The turtle moved slowly, methodically, stopping every few steps to observe the world around it. There was something peaceful about its presence, something steady and unhurried. Luna watched as the turtle found a comfortable spot near the water and settled in, pulling its head partially into its shell. For a long time, neither of them moved. The night continued its slow procession around them, the stars wheeling overhead, the river singing its endless song. Finally, the turtle's head emerged again, and it turned to look directly at Luna. Its ancient eyes were kind and knowing, and Luna felt suddenly exposed, as though the turtle could see right through her small body into the emptiness where her light should have been. The turtle said nothing, but its presence was somehow comforting. It didn't seem bothered by Luna's darkness or confused by her appearance. It simply accepted her as she was, another creature resting by the river on a quiet night. Luna found herself speaking, though she hadn't planned to. The words tumbled out in a rush, explaining how she had lost her light, how ashamed she felt, how she was searching for a way to get it back. The turtle listened without interruption, its breathing slow and steady. When Luna finally fell silent, the turtle remained quiet for a long moment, seeming to consider her words carefully. Then, in a voice as old and patient as stone, it spoke, not in words, but in gesture. The turtle began to move toward the water, and Luna followed, curious despite her sadness. At the water's edge, the turtle paused and looked up at the sky, then down at the river. Luna followed its gaze and saw what the turtle wanted her to see. The river was full of reflected stars. Every point of light in the sky had a twin in the water, dancing and shimmering with the current. The reflection was beautiful, but it was also something else. It was proof that light could exist in many forms, that sometimes the most important light wasn't the one you created, but the one you reflected. The turtle slowly made its way into the shallow water, and Luna watched as tiny ripples spread out from its shell, disturbing the reflected stars, but creating something new, a pattern of movement and energy that was beautiful in its own way. The turtle turned back to look at Luna one more time, and in its eyes she saw understanding. Not everything that was valuable glowed on its own. Sometimes the most important thing was simply being present, creating ripples, reflecting the light that already existed in the world. The turtle submerged slowly, disappearing beneath the surface, and Luna was alone again. But something had shifted inside her. The desperate panic had eased slightly, replaced by a quieter uncertainty. She didn't have answers yet, but she had witnessed something true. Beauty existed in many forms. and perhaps Worth did too.
Luna left the river as dawn began to paint the eastern sky in soft pinks and greys. She found shelter in a hollow log and slept through the day, her dreams full of reflected starlight and gentle ripples. When she woke again at dusk, she felt different. The shame was still there, heavy and persistent, but it no longer felt quite so crushing. She decided to continue her journey, though she wasn't sure anymore what she was searching for. Her light felt further away than ever, but the turtle's silent lesson had planted something new in her mind, a seed of possibility that hadn't been there before. Luna flew through the gathering darkness until the forest began to change. The trees grew taller and the ground began to slope upward, becoming rocky and steep. She had reached the foothills of the mountains that had always been a distant blue presence on the horizon from her meadow home. The air here was thinner and cooler, scented with pine and stone. Luna flew between massive boulders and ancient trees that had weathered centuries of storms. Everything felt bigger here, more imposing, and she felt smaller than ever. As she navigated the rocky terrain, Luna noticed a sound, faint at first, but growing stronger. It was a kind of scraping, rhythmic and determined. Curious, she followed the sound until she found its source. A small beetle, no bigger than Luna herself, pushing a round pebble up a steep incline. The beetle's progress was painfully slow. For every few inches it gained, it would sometimes slip back, losing ground. But each time this happened, the beetle would simply reposition itself and push again, its legs straining with effort, its determination absolute. Luna landed on a nearby rock and watched the beetle work. She couldn't understand why it was pushing the pebble at all. Where was it taking it? What purpose did this serve? The task seemed impossibly difficult and alternately pointless. After a particularly hard-won foot of progress, the beetle paused to rest, and Luna couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. She asked the beetle why it was pushing the pebble, what it was trying to achieve. The beetle looked at her with compound eyes that reflected the moonlight in 1,000 tiny facets. Then it explained, in a voice that carried the weight of understood purpose, that it was building something. At the top of this hill was the beetle's home, and it was collecting stones to reinforce the entrance before winter came. Each pebble mattered. Each one made the structure stronger, safer, better prepared for the cold months ahead. Luna looked at the single pebble, so small and insignificant on its own, and then she thought about what the beetle had said. One pebble at a time, each one mattered. The beetle wasn't trying to move a mountain in a single night. It was simply doing what it could do,
making progress, one small push at a time, building something meaningful through persistence and patience. The beetle returned to its work, and Luna watched for a while longer. She thought about her own journey, how she had expected to find her light immediately, how she had felt that without it she could do nothing of value. But here was this beetle doing something important without any light at all, without any magic or special gifts, just determination and steady effort. When the beetle finally crested the hill and disappeared over the other side, Luna felt something shift in her chest. Not her light returning, not yet, but something else, a kind of respect for small efforts and quiet persistence, a recognition that worth wasn't always about shining brightly, but sometimes about showing up and doing the work that needed to be done.
Luna continued higher into the mountains as the night deepened. The path became more treacherous, with sharp rocks and sudden drop-offs, but she flew carefully, her dark body nearly invisible against the mountain stone. She had learned to navigate without relying on her own light, using the moon and stars as her guides, feeling the air currents and trusting her instincts. Then, without warning, the weather changed. Clouds rolled in from the west, thick and fast, swallowing the moon and stars. The temperature dropped, and the wind began to whip through the mountain passes with increasing ferocity. Luna tried to find shelter, but the storm arrived too quickly, bringing rain that fell in heavy sheets. The wind caught Luna and tossed her about like a leaf. She tumbled through the air, unable to control her direction, unable to see anything in the darkness and rain. Terror gripped her as she was thrown against rocks and branches, each impact jarring and painful. She tried to grab onto something, anything, but her small legs couldn't find purchase in the chaos. Just when Luna thought she would be dashed against the mountainside, the wind threw her into a narrow crevice between two large boulders. She tumbled deeper into the crack until she landed on soft, dry moss. The sound of the storm became muted, distant, and Luna lay still, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She had never felt so small or so powerless. The storm raged outside, indifferent to her existence, and Luna realized how fragile she truly was. With or without her light, she was just a tiny creature in a vast and sometimes dangerous world.
As Luna's eyes adjusted to the darkness of the crevice, she realized she wasn't alone. In the corner, almost invisible against the stone, was a spider, its web strung delicately between the rock walls. The web was partially destroyed, likely torn by the same winds that had brought Luna here. But the spider was already at work repairing it, spinning new threads with patient precision. Luna watched the spider work, mesmerized by the methodical way it moved from point to point, testing each strand, reinforcing weak areas, rebuilding what had been lost. The spider seemed unbothered by the storm, accepting the destruction as simply another challenge to be met. When the spider finally paused in its work, it acknowledged Luna's presence with a slight tilt of its body. There was no judgment in its manner, no questions about why a firefly was out in such weather, or why her body remained dark, Luna found herself speaking again, the words coming more easily now. She told the spider about her lost light, about her journey, about the turtle and the beetle, and all the confusion she felt about who she was without her glow. She explained that she had always defined herself by her light, that it had been the core of her identity, and now that it was gone, she didn't know what was left. The spider listened, then returned to its web, but this time its movement seemed almost like a response. It showed Luna how it worked, how each thread connected to others, how the web was both strong and flexible, how it could be damaged and repaired, destroyed and rebuilt. The spider's worth wasn't in being invulnerable, but in its ability to adapt, to persist, to create beauty and function even after loss.
As the night wore on and the storm gradually subsided, Luna continued to watch the spider work. She noticed things she had never considered before about webs. Each strand was incredibly thin, almost invisible on its own, but together they created something remarkable. The web wasn't strong because any single thread was unbreakable, but because they all supported each other, distributed weight and stress in a way that made the whole structure resilient. The spider showed Luna how it anchored the web to multiple points, how it built in redundancy, how it accepted that damage would happen and planned for repair rather than perfection. The web wasn't meant to be permanent or perfect. It was meant to be functional, adaptable, alive. Luna thought about her own life before losing her light. She had spent so much energy trying to glow as brightly as the others, trying to make her light perfect and constant, never wavering. She had believed that her worth lay in that perfection, in never dimming, never failing. But watching the spider rebuild its web in the aftermath of the storm, Luna began to understand something different. Perhaps worth wasn't about being invulnerable or perfect. Perhaps it was about being resilient, about continuing despite damage, about finding new ways to create meaning even when the old ways had been destroyed. The spider's web would be torn again, probably many times, but the spider would rebuild it each time, not because it was trying to create something permanent, but because the act of creating itself had value. As the dawn began to filter into the crevice, casting everything in soft grey light, the spider finished its repairs and retreated to a corner to rest. Luna thanked it silently and prepared to continue her journey, though she felt less certain now about what she was searching for.
Luna emerged from the crevice into a world washed clean by the storm. Everything sparkled with moisture, and the air smelled fresh and alive. She flew down the mountainside, her wings stronger now, despite the battering they had taken in the storm. She had survived something difficult, and that survival had taught her something about her own strength. By midday, Luna found herself in a meadow she had never seen before, far from her forest home. The meadow was filled with wildflowers of every colour, swaying gently in the breeze.
Luna found shelter under a large daisy and rested, watching bees move from flower to flower, watching butterflies dance in the sunlight. As she rested, Luna noticed something interesting. Not all the flowers were perfect. Some had petals that were torn or wilted. Some were smaller than others, or oddly shaped, or missing blooms entirely. But the bees and butterflies visited them all the same, gathering nectar without discrimination, appreciating each flower for what it offered rather than judging it for what it lacked. A thought began to form in Luna's mind, still vague and uncertain, but growing stronger. She had been so focused on what she had lost that she hadn't paid attention to what remained. She was still herself, still Luna, with or without her light. Her wings still worked, her heart still beat. She could still fly and explore and learn and grow.
As evening approached, Luna left the meadow and found herself drawn toward an enormous oak tree that stood alone on a hill. The tree was ancient, its trunk thick and gnarled, its branches spreading wide like arms welcoming the sky. Something about the tree called to her, a sense of wisdom and permanence that made her feel she might find answers there. Luna flew up through the branches until she reached a hollow high in the trunk. Inside the hollow, she found a perfect resting place, and as darkness fell, she settled in to spend the night. But sleep wouldn't come. Luna found herself thinking about everything she had experienced since losing her light. The turtle showing her reflected starlight. The beetle pushing its pebble. The spider rebuilding its web. Each encounter had taught her something, though she was only beginning to understand what those lessons meant. As the night deepened, other creatures came to the oak tree. An owl settled on a branch nearby, its keen eyes scanning the ground below. A family of possums climbed through the branches, their babies clinging to their mother's back. A bat swooped past, navigating through echolocation, needing no light to find its way. Luna watched them all from her hollow, and she realized something profound. Every creature had its own way of moving through the world, its own gifts and purposes. The owl didn't try to glow like a firefly. The beetle didn't feel inadequate because it couldn't see in color. Each creature simply was what it was, and that was enough. Sitting in the hollow of the old oak tree, Luna's mind drifted back to a memory from before she lost her light. It was a night when a gentle rain had fallen, and all the fireflies had taken shelter under large leaves and in hollow logs. Luna remembered feeling restless, wanting to be out dancing despite the weather. But one of the older fireflies, a gentle creature named Ember, who had been her friend, had sat with her and told her stories while they waited for the rain to pass.
Ember had told Luna about the time she had injured one of her wings and couldn't fly for nearly a week. She had felt useless then, unable to join the dances, unable to contribute her light to the patterns. But during that time, Ember had noticed things she had never seen before. She had watched the way the younger fireflies learned their patterns, had seen which ones struggled and which ones soared. When her wing healed and she could fly again, she had used what she learned to help the younger ones, guiding them with patience and understanding that came from having once been grounded herself. Ember had told Luna that sometimes not flying taught you things that flying never could. At the time, Luna hadn't really understood what she meant. She had nodded politely, but thought privately that nothing could be worth not being able to fly, not being able to dance with the others. Now, sitting in the darkness of the oak tree, Luna finally understood what Ember had been trying to tell her. Loss wasn't just loss. It was also an opportunity to see things differently, to learn things that success and perfection never taught you.
As the moon climbed higher in the sky, Luna made another decision. She would return home, not because she had found her light, and not because she had discovered some magical cure for what was wrong with her. She would return because hiding was worse than facing the truth, and because she was beginning to understand that her worth wasn't entirely dependent on her glow. The decision brought both relief and terror. What would the other fireflies say? Would they pity her? Would they turn away? Luna didn't know, but she knew that continuing to run, continuing to hide, would only make her smaller and more afraid. She also realized something else. During her journey, she had helped creatures without even knowing it. The turtle had seemed less lonely with her company. The beetle had continued its work with more determination after she had watched and witnessed its efforts. The spider had rebuilt its web, and Luna's presence had been part of that night's story, a quiet witness to resilience and adaptation. Perhaps helping didn't always look like glowing brightly. Perhaps sometimes it looked like being present, like paying attention, like bearing witness to others' struggles and triumphs. Perhaps her dark body moving through the forest could still create ripples, still matter in ways she hadn't considered. Luna left the oak tree as dawn approached, flying back the way she had come, but this time she travelled with less desperation and more purpose. She wasn't returning as a failure who had given up her search. She was returning as someone who had learned something important, even if she couldn't quite put it all into words yet. The journey back took several nights, but Luna no longer felt the same urgency that had driven her away. She stopped to rest when she was tired, took time to observe the world around her, and found that her dark body allowed her to see things she had missed before. She noticed how much light there was in the world that had nothing to do with fireflies. the way moonlight turns spider webs into silver jewelry, the way stars reflected in every puddle and stream, the way certain types of moss glowed faintly in the deepest parts of the forest, creating their own subtle illumination. She also noticed how many creatures moved through the world without any light at all, navigating by sound or smell or instinct, living full and meaningful lives without glowing. The world was so much bigger and more complex than she had understood when she defined herself only by her light. On the final night of her journey, Luna reached the river where she had met the turtle. She stopped there again, landing on the same stone, and looked out at the water. The moon was full now, and its reflection created a brilliant pathway across the river's surface. Luna thought about the turtle's lesson, about reflection and ripples. She thought about how the river didn't diminish the moon's light by reflecting it, how in fact the reflection made it more accessible, brought it down to earth where creatures could appreciate it more closely. Maybe that was part of what she could do now. Maybe without her own light, she could learn to reflect the light around her, to help others see beauty they might otherwise miss, to create ripples that mattered in their own way.
When Luna finally flew over the familiar stone bridge and through the part of the forest she had known her whole life, emotion welled up in her chest. Everything looked the same, yet she felt completely different. The forest she had fled in shame now seemed like a place full of possibilities she had never noticed before. She arrived at her meadow just as evening was falling. The other fireflies were beginning to wake, their lights starting to blink on, one by one. Luna's heart hammered in her chest as she watched them, but she didn't hide this time. Instead, she flew slowly into the meadow, her dark body moving among the points of light. At first, no one seemed to notice her. The fireflies were too absorbed in their evening rituals, stretching their wings and greeting each other with pulses of light. But then one firefly and then another began to notice the dark shape moving among them. The dancing paused. Lights turned in her direction. Luna braced herself for rejection, for pity, for questions she couldn't answer. But what happened instead surprised her completely. The fireflies swarmed around her, not with judgment, but with concern and relief. Where had she been? They had missed her. They had been worried. Was she all right? No one mentioned her missing light at first. They were simply glad she was back, glad she was safe. The warmth of their welcome brought tears to Luna's eyes that she hadn't known she could cry. After the initial reunion, the questions came, as Luna had known they would. What had happened to her light? Where had she gone? Why had she disappeared without telling anyone? Luna took a deep breath and told them everything. She told them about waking up dark, about the shame that had made her hide, about her desperate journey to find her light again. She told them about the turtle and the beetle and the spider, about the storm and the meadow and the oak tree. She told them about the lessons she had learned, though she admitted she was still trying to understand them all. As she spoke, Luna realized something that made her voice stronger. She wasn't telling this story from a place of defeat or failure. She was telling it from a place of growth and understanding. Yes, she had lost her light, but she had gained something else, something harder to name, but no less valuable. The other fireflies listened in silence, and when Luna finished, there was a long pause. Then Ember, her old friend who had once told her about being grounded with an injured wing, flew closer. Ember's light pulsed gently, and in that pulse, Luna heard understanding. Ember told her that light sometimes dimmed for reasons no one understood. It had happened before to other fireflies, though not often. Sometimes the light came back on its own. Sometimes it never did. But either way, a firefly was still a firefly, still part of the dance, still valued and loved.
In the nights that followed, Luna found her place among the fireflies again, but it was a different place than before. Without her own light, she couldn't participate in the patterns the same way, but she discovered she could help in other ways. Luna became a guide for the youngest fireflies, the ones just learning to control their lights and coordinate with others. She could see the patterns from the outside now, could spot when someone was out of sync or struggling. She could offer encouragement and advice, could help them understand that mistakes were part of learning. She also became an observer of the night itself. While the others danced, Luna would explore the meadow and forest, noticing things that her own light had once obscured. She learned which flowers opened only at night, which creatures emerged in darkness, where the best currents of air flowed for effortless gliding. She shared these discoveries with the other fireflies, and they began to appreciate the world beyond their dance in new ways. Luna showed them secret places she had found, beautiful sights they had flown past without noticing, small wonders that darkness revealed. And slowly Luna began to understand that this was valuable too. Maybe not in the way she had once imagined, maybe not in the way that felt comfortable or familiar, but valuable nonetheless. She was contributing something unique, something that came specifically from her loss and her journey to understand it. One evening, about a month after Luna's return, a young firefly named Spark came to her in distress. Spark had wandered away from the meadow during the day and gotten lost. Now night had fallen, and Spark couldn't find the way home. The young firefly's light was weak and flickering with fear. Luna listened to Spark's tearful story and immediately offered to help. She knew the forest now in ways she hadn't before, had learned to navigate by landmarks that didn't require light. Together they set off into the darkness, with Spark's dim light bobbing alongside Luna's dark form. As they travelled, Luna pointed out the patterns of the stars visible through the canopy, the way certain rocks were shaped, the sound of the stream that eventually led back to their meadow. She taught Spark how to read the forest, how to use senses beyond sight, how to trust instincts and observations. When they finally made it back to the meadow, Spark's parents rushed forward with relief and gratitude. But Spark didn't fly to them immediately.
Instead, the young firefly turned to Luna and said something that made Luna's heart swell with an unfamiliar warmth. Spark said that Luna had been like a light in the darkness, even without glowing. That Luna's presence had made the frightening journey feel safe. That Luna's knowledge and calm had guided them home more surely than any light could have. Luna hadn't needed to glow to be a light for someone else. After helping Spark, other fireflies began to seek Luna out when they had problems or questions. Her travels had given her a perspective that the others lacked, and her time without light had taught her patience and observation. A firefly named Flicker came to her worried about their light, which had started to sputter irregularly. Luna remembered her own panic when she first lost her light, but she was able to offer Flicker something she hadn't had herself: calm understanding, and the reminder that worth existed beyond perfection. An older firefly named Glow sought her advice about retiring from the dance, feeling that their dimming light meant they no longer had a place. Luna shared what she had learned about different ways to contribute, about how being present and bearing witness had value, about how reflection could matter as much as originating light. 2 young fireflies came to her in the midst of an argument about whose light was brighter, each trying to prove superiority over the other. Luna showed them the meadow at night, pointing out how every light contributed to the overall pattern, how competition missed the point of the dance entirely, how beauty came from diversity and cooperation rather than uniformity. With each conversation, Luna felt herself growing into this new role. She was becoming something she had never imagined being: a keeper of wisdom, a guide, someone who helped others navigate their own challenges, not by being perfect, but by having survived imperfection. One evening, as the fireflies prepared for their dance, Luna noticed something that the others, absorbed in their light-making, had missed. The air felt different, charged with electricity. The clouds on the horizon were building in a particular way. Birds were unusually quiet. Luna had learnt to read these signs during her journey, and she recognized them now as warnings. A storm was coming, and it was going to be severe. Luna flew through the meadow quickly, urging everyone to take shelter. Some of the fireflies wanted to dismiss her concern, to continue their dance, but Luna was insistent. She had survived a mountain storm, had felt its terrible power, and she knew what they were facing. Because of Luna's warning, all the fireflies found shelter before the storm hit. It was indeed fierce, with winds that would have scattered them dangerously if they had been in the air. As they huddled together under broad leaves and in hollow logs, the other fireflies thanked Luna for her vigilance, for noticing what their own lights had prevented them from seeing. Luna realized something important in that moment. Her lack of light hadn't just taught her to see differently, it had made her more sensitive to the world around her, more aware of subtle signs and changes. What she had once thought of as a disability had become, in its own way, a kind of gift.
She thought about the spider rebuilding its web, about the beetle pushing its stone, about the turtle creating ripples. Each had shown her that purpose came in many forms, that contribution wasn't limited to a single definition of success.
Several months had passed since Luna's return, when a young firefly named Glimmer approached her with a question that Luna had been asking herself more and more lately. Glimmer asked if Luna missed her light, if she was sad about what she had lost. Luna considered the question carefully. She had learned not to answer quickly, to give complex questions the thought they deserved. Did she miss her light? Yes, of course she did. There was loss there, and loss created empty spaces that never entirely filled. But Luna had also gained things she never would have found if she had remained unchanged. She had gained perspective and empathy. She had gained the ability to see beyond herself, to notice things that glowing had obscured. She had gained resilience and adaptability, had learnt that she could survive things that once would have destroyed her. Luna told Glimmer that she had learnt something surprising. You could miss something and still be okay without it. You could acknowledge loss without being consumed by it. You could grow around grief the way a tree grows around a wound, not erasing it, but incorporating it, making it part of your story rather than the end of your story. She told Glimmer that she used to think her light was her identity, that without it she was nothing. But now she understood identity was more complex than that, more layered. She was Luna the firefly, Luna the guide, Luna the observer, Luna the survivor, Luna the teacher. She was all of these things with or without her light. One night, as Luna sat on her favourite perch, watching the other fireflies dance, something extraordinary happened. She was feeling particularly content, absorbed in the beauty of the patterns her friends were creating, when she felt a familiar warmth beginning to bloom in her chest. At first, Luna thought she was imagining it. The warmth grew stronger, spreading through her body like sunrise spreading across the sky. And then, faintly at first, but growing steadier, her light began to glow. Luna looked down at herself in wonder. There it was, the light she had thought lost forever, pulsing gently from within her small body. It wasn't as bright as it once had been, and it flickered sometimes in ways it never had before, but it was unmistakably there, unmistakably hers. Her first instinct was joy, pure and uncomplicated. Her light had returned. But as the initial excitement faded, Luna felt something unexpected, a moment of uncertainty. She had built a life without her light, had found purpose and meaning in its absence. Who was she now that it had returned? The other fireflies noticed her glow and flew over, celebrating her returned light with excited loops and spirals. Their happiness was genuine and infectious, and Luna found herself joining their dance, her wings carrying her upward into patterns she had once known by heart.
In the days that followed, Luna discovered that having her light back didn't erase the lessons she had learned without it. If anything, those lessons made her light more meaningful. She danced with the others again, but she also continued her role as guide and observer. She contributed her light to the patterns, but she also noticed things that pure focus on glowing would have made her miss. Luna found that she could move between both worlds now. She could be part of the brilliant display and also step back to appreciate it. She could share her own light and also help others find theirs. She could glow and also create space for darkness when darkness was what someone needed. Her light was different now, too. It didn't pulse with the same desperate need to be perfect, the same anxiety about dimming or going out. It glowed with a quieter confidence, a light that came from deep acceptance rather than frantic performance. When it flickered or faded temporarily, Luna no longer panicked. She had learned that her worth wasn't contingent on constant brightness. The young fireflies noticed this quality in Luna's light and wanted to understand it. They asked her how she stayed so calm, how her light seemed both strong and gentle at the same time. Luna shared with them what she had learned, that true light came from within, from accepting all parts of yourself, from understanding that worth existed independent of achievement or perfection.
Luna became known throughout the meadow as a teacher of a different kind of wisdom. She taught the practical skills of navigation and observation, but she also taught something deeper, the art of being comfortable with uncertainty, the practice of finding value in unexpected places, the courage to continue despite loss. She took the youngest fireflies on night journeys through the forest, showing them the places she had discovered during her dark time. She taught them to read the stars and feel the wind, to notice the small creatures that only came out in deepest darkness, to appreciate beauty that existed beyond their own light. She also created a new tradition. Once a month, on the night of the new moon, when the sky was darkest, Luna would gather any firefly who wanted to join her, and they would fly together without glowing. They would practice navigating in darkness, learning to trust their other senses, discovering what the night revealed when they weren't distracted by their own light. Some of the fireflies found this practice uncomfortable at first. It felt wrong to deliberately dim their lights, to choose not to glow when they were capable of glowing. But Luna helped them understand that this wasn't about denying their gifts. It was about expanding their understanding,
about recognizing that they were more than their light, about preparing themselves for any challenges they might face. And, inevitably, over time, other fireflies experienced what Luna had experienced. Sometimes lights dimmed or went out temporarily, and when this happened, those fireflies came to Luna. She could offer them something precious, the assurance that they would survive, that worth existed beyond glowing, that loss could teach lessons that success never would.
One evening, a firefly from a distant meadow arrived seeking Luna specifically. This firefly, whose name was Shimmer, had heard stories about Luna, about the firefly who had lost her light and found something else, something harder to name, but no less valuable. Shimmer's own light was fading, growing dimmer each night, despite Shimmer's desperate efforts to make it bright. Shimmer had tried everything, had become increasingly anxious and afraid, and had finally decided to make the long journey to find Luna and ask for help. Luna listened to Shimmer's story with deep compassion, remembering her own terror when her light first disappeared. She told Shimmer that she couldn't promise the light would return or stay, couldn't offer easy solutions or quick fixes, but she could offer something else: perspective, companionship, and the reminder that dimming light didn't mean diminishing worth. Luna spent several days with Shimmer, showing her the forest, teaching her to navigate by stars and instinct, sharing all the lessons she had learned during her dark time. She introduced Shimmer to the other fireflies who had experienced temporary darkness, creating a community of understanding and support. Slowly, Shimmer's anxiety began to ease. The light continued to fade, but Shimmer stopped fighting against it with such desperation. Instead, Shimmer began to notice other things, to develop other skills, to find purpose beyond glowing. And in that acceptance, in that release of frantic control, something shifted. Shimmer's light didn't return to its former brightness, but it stabilized, glowing steadily at its new level.
One quiet night, Luna returned to the river where she had met the turtle so many months before. She sat on the same stone, looking out at the water, watching the reflected stars dance on the surface. Her own light pulsed gently, adding one more point of brightness to the night. Luna thought about her journey, about everything that had happened since that terrible evening when she woke up dark. She thought about the fear and shame, about the desperate search for what she had lost, about all the lessons she had learned along the way. She realized that if she could go back and prevent herself from losing her light, she wasn't sure she would. The thought surprised her. Of course there had been pain, confusion, and loss, but there had also been growth, discovery, and transformation. She had become someone she never would have become if everything had stayed the same. Luna understood now what the turtle had been trying to show her that first night. Light existed in many forms. Sometimes it was the bright glow she now carried within her. Sometimes it was the reflected starlight on water. Sometimes it was the ripples created by presence and witness. Sometimes it was the dark space between lights that made the lights themselves visible. She thought about the beetle building something meaningful, one stone at a time. She thought about the spider, accepting damage and rebuilding with patient persistence. She thought about all the creatures who moved through the world without glowing, living full and purposeful lives.
That night, when Luna returned to the meadow, the fireflies were preparing for their dance. Luna joined them, her light pulsing in harmony with the others, creating patterns that swirled and flowed across the darkness like living constellations. But this time, Luna danced with a different awareness. She wasn't trying to be the brightest or the most perfect. She wasn't anxious about her light failing or worried about what others thought. She was simply present, contributing her light to the collective beauty, trusting that her unique pattern and rhythm added something valuable to the whole. Luna noticed young Glimmer struggling with a particular sequence, and she flew closer, adjusting her own pattern to help guide the younger firefly. She saw where the formation was losing cohesion and moved to strengthen it. She watched the entire dance with both participant awareness and observer perspective, existing in both states simultaneously. This, Luna realized, was the gift her darkness had given her, the ability to be both in and out, both glowing and observing, both contributing and witnessing. She could lose herself in the dance and also maintain awareness of the bigger picture. She could shine brightly and also appreciate the darkness that made shine meaningful. The other fireflies felt the shift in her energy, though they might not have been able to name what was different. Luna's presence in the dance made it better, not because her light was brightest, but because she danced with wholeness, with acceptance, with the integration of all she had learned.
As months turned into seasons and seasons into years, Luna continued to live in the meadow, contributing her light to the dance and her wisdom to the community. Her story became legend, told to young fireflies as they learned to control their first glows. But Luna's greatest gift to the community wasn't her story or even her teaching. It was the way she had expanded their understanding of what it meant to be a firefly, what it meant to have worth, what it meant to belong. Because of Luna, the fireflies no longer measured themselves solely by the brightness of their light. They valued observation and wisdom, guidance and presence, resilience and adaptation. They understood that temporary darkness wasn't failure, but opportunity, that loss could teach lessons that success never would. The young fireflies still learned to glow, still practiced their patterns, and took pride in their light, but they also learned to navigate in darkness, to appreciate quiet wisdom, to find value in unexpected places. They grew up with a more expansive definition of worth, a more flexible understanding of identity. And when fireflies lost their light, temporarily or permanently,
they no longer hid in shame. They sought help and community, shared their struggles, and discovered that darkness could be survived, could even become source of strength and insight. The meadow became known as a place of acceptance and growth, where all fireflies were valued for who they were, not just for how brightly they glowed. Luna watched all of this with quiet satisfaction. She had wanted to find her light, and she had found it. But she had also found something else, something she hadn't known to search for: herself. Not the self that depended on external validation or perfect performance, but the deeper self that existed regardless of circumstances, the essential Luna, who was enough simply by being.
Many seasons after Luna first lost her light, she returned once more to the old oak tree, where she had spent a transformative night during her journey. The tree stood as solid and wise as ever, its branches spreading wide against the star-filled sky. Luna flew up to the same hollow where she had once sheltered, frightened and lost. She settled there now with her light glowing softly, and looked out at the world with different eyes. So much had changed, yet the oak remained constant, a reminder that some things endured through all transformations. As Luna sat in the peaceful darkness, she heard a small sound. Another firefly was approaching, flying erratically, clearly distressed. The firefly landed near Luna's hollow, and Luna saw immediately what was wrong. This young firefly's light was flickering badly, dimming and brightening in an unstable pattern that spoke of fear and confusion. Luna recognized herself in this frightened creature. She remembered what it felt like to believe your worth was slipping away, to feel that loss of light meant loss of everything. Her heart filled with compassion. The young firefly looked up at Luna, whose steady glow seemed like a beacon in the darkness. The young firefly asked in a trembling voice if Luna knew how to fix broken light, how to make it bright and constant again. Luna smiled gently. She told the young firefly that she didn't have all the answers, that light was mysterious and didn't always behave as expected. But she could share something else, something more valuable than a quick fix or easy solution. She could share her story. She could offer companionship. She could teach the young firefly to navigate in darkness, to find worth beyond glowing, to understand that transformation wasn't the same as destruction. Luna spent the night with the frightened young firefly, whose name was Glisten. She told Glisten about waking up dark, about the shame and fear, about the long journey through the forest and up the mountains. She told about the turtle and the beetle and the spider, about all the lessons learned in darkness. Glisten listened with rapt attention, and as the story unfolded, the young firefly's frantic flickering began to calm. The light was still unstable, still weak, but the fear began to ease. Glisten asked questions, and Luna answered them honestly, never promising more than she could deliver, never offering false hope or easy answers. As dawn approached,
Luna told Glisten something she had learned to be true. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would teach valuable lessons. Whatever happened with the light, whether it stayed or faded, Glisten would survive and grow and discover things that constant, perfect light never revealed. Luna offered to guide Glisten back to her meadow, where there was a community that understood, that valued all fireflies, regardless of how brightly they glowed. Glisten accepted gratefully, and together they flew through the early morning light, two fireflies of different generations connected by shared experience. As they travelled, Luna realized that this was how wisdom moved through the world, not through grand proclamations or perfect teachings, but through shared stories and offered companionship, through one creature helping another navigate challenges they themselves had faced. She had received help from the turtle and the beetle and the spider, though they had never known they were helping. Now she could offer help deliberately, consciously, passing forward what she had learned. The circle was complete, yet it was also ongoing, an endless spiral of learning and teaching, struggling and supporting, losing and finding.
Years passed, and Luna grew older. Her light, which had returned that magical night, continued to glow, though sometimes it dimmed and sometimes it brightened, reflecting her energy and health. Luna had learned not to worry about these fluctuations, to accept them as natural rhythms rather than signs of failure. She became known far beyond her own meadow as a wisdom keeper, a firefly who understood the deeper truths about light and darkness, worth and identity. Fireflies from distant places would seek her out, bringing their fears and questions, their losses and confusions. Luna welcomed them all. She shared her story countless times, always finding new details to emphasize, depending on what her listener needed to hear. Sometimes she emphasized the turtle's lesson about reflection. Sometimes she focused on the beetle's persistence or the spider's resilience. Each telling was tailored, responsive, alive. But Luna also continued to learn. Each firefly who came to her taught her something new, added nuance to her understanding, revealed aspects of loss and growth she hadn't considered. She discovered that wisdom wasn't something you achieved once and kept forever. It was something you cultivated continuously, tending it like a garden, allowing it to grow and change with experience. Luna taught the younger fireflies in her meadow to observe carefully, to question assumptions, to find value in unexpected places. She taught them that failure wasn't opposite of success, but part of the path toward it, that loss could be teacher, that darkness had gifts to offer if you were brave enough to stop running from it.
One calm evening, as Luna settled into her favourite spot among the ferns, she felt a profound tiredness settle over her. It wasn't the simple fatigue of a long night's flight, but something deeper, something that spoke of many seasons lived, many lessons learned, many journeys taken. Luna's light pulsed softly, gently, a rhythm that matched her slowing heartbeat. She looked out at the meadow where young fireflies were beginning their evening dance, their lights blinking on like stars appearing in the twilight sky. She watched them with deep satisfaction and love. She had lived a full life, richer and more complex than she ever could have imagined during those early days when she thought her light defined everything she was. She had learned that identity was layered and mysterious, that worth came from within, that purpose revealed itself in unexpected ways. Luna thought about all the fireflies she had helped, all the stories she had shared, all the wisdom she had tried to pass forward. She hoped it would continue without her, hoped the lessons would ripple outward through generations, hoped that somewhere in the future fireflies would navigate darkness with less fear because she had once been brave enough to face her own. Her light was dimming now, not with anxiety or panic, but with peaceful acceptance. Luna understood that this was natural, that all lights eventually faded, that endings were part of the eternal cycle of transformation. She wasn't afraid.
As Luna's light grew fainter, the other fireflies noticed and gathered around her. Ember was there, and Glimmer, now grown, and young Spark, who Luna had guided home so long ago. Shimmer had travelled back to be present, and Glisten too, whose light now glowed steady and strong. They formed a circle around Luna, their lights pulsing gently in tribute to their teacher, their guide, their friend. No one spoke, but the message in their lights was clear. Gratitude, love, honour for all Luna had been and all she had taught them. Luna felt their presence like a warm embrace. She had been so afraid once of being in darkness alone, of losing connection with her community. But here, at the end, she was surrounded by light and love, held by the very community she had once feared would reject her. With her last bit of strength, Luna pulsed her light in a pattern she had created long ago, a unique rhythm that was hers alone. The fireflies around her recognized it and responded, their lights picking up her pattern and amplifying it, carrying it forward even as her own light faded. And then gently, peacefully, Luna's light went out for the final time. But the pattern continued, passed from firefly to firefly, woven into their evening dances, preserved in their collective memory. Luna's light had ended, but the ripples she created continued to spread outward, touching lives she would never know, teaching lessons that would echo through generations.
In the seasons that followed Luna's passing, her story became central to the firefly community. Young fireflies learned about her journey as part of their education, understanding from their earliest glowing that light was important, but not everything. That worth existed independent of brightness, that loss could teach valuable lessons. The tradition Luna had started of flying together without glowing on the new moon continued and spread to other meadows. Fireflies everywhere learned to navigate in darkness, to trust their other senses, to appreciate what night revealed when they weren't distracted by their own light. When fireflies lost their light, temporarily or permanently, The community responded with compassion rather than pity, with support rather than judgment. They remembered Luna's teaching that darkness wasn't failure but opportunity, that worth remained constant through all transformations, that identity was too complex and too precious to be reduced to a single quality. Glisten, who Luna had helped years before, became a wisdom keeper in her own right, sharing Luna's story with new generations and adding her own experiences. She taught that wisdom was passed forward through stories and presence, that helping others navigate challenges you had faced was one of life's deepest purposes. The meadow became a place of pilgrimage for fireflies struggling with loss of any kind. They came seeking the community that Luna had helped shape, the acceptance that Luna had modelled, the wisdom that Luna had shared so generously. And they found it because Luna's greatest gift hadn't been her light or even her teaching, but the culture of compassion and understanding she had helped create.
And so the story of Luna, the firefly who lost her light, became a story about finding yourself, about discovering that worth existed beyond external validation, about learning that transformation wasn't the same as destruction. It became a story about resilience and adaptation, about the lessons that darkness taught and the gifts that loss could bring. It became a story about community and compassion, about how helping others navigate the challenges you had faced was one of the most meaningful ways to honour your own journey. It became a story about reflection and ripples, about how influence spread outward in ways you could never fully measure or control. Most importantly, it became a story about self-acceptance, about understanding that you were enough exactly as you were, with all your lights and all your darkness, with all your gifts and all your losses, with all your brightness and all your shadows. That the goal wasn't perfection, but wholeness, wasn't constant glowing, but genuine presence, wasn't proving worth, but accepting it as inherent and unchanging. The fireflies who heard Luna's story carried it with them through their lives, drawing on its lessons during their own dark times, sharing it with others who needed to hear it, adding their own experiences and insights to create an ever-growing tapestry of wisdom. And in this way, Luna's light never truly went out. It transformed, becoming something larger and more enduring than any individual glow could ever be. It became the light of understanding, the brightness of compassion, the illumination of wisdom passed forward through generations. And now, as this story comes to its close, imagine the meadow where Luna once lived. The fireflies are dancing their eternal dance, their lights pulsing in patterns that honour tradition while embracing change. Among them are young fireflies just learning to glow, and older fireflies whose lights have dimmed with age, and some whose lights flicker uncertainly, and some whose lights have gone out entirely. But all of them dance together. All of them belong. All of them contribute to the beauty of the night in their own unique ways. Because of Luna's journey, because of her courage to face darkness and her wisdom to find value in loss, the community understands
that worth isn't about brightness, but about being, about presence, about the ripples each creature creates simply by existing. As you settle into sleep tonight, carry this lesson with you. You are enough, exactly as you are. Your worth isn't contingent on achievement or perfection, on constant brightness or flawless performance. You are valuable because you exist, because you are part of the great dance of life, because your presence creates ripples that matter in ways you may never fully know. Like Luna, you may face times of darkness, times when your light feels dim or lost entirely. But those times are not endings. They are transformations, opportunities to discover deeper truths about yourself, chances to develop resilience and wisdom that brightness alone could never teach. And when you encounter others in their darkness, remember Luna's example. Offer presence without judgment, companionship without conditions, understanding born from your own experiences with loss and growth. Pass forward the wisdom you have gained. Create ripples of compassion that spread outward beyond what you can see. Rest now, knowing that you are held by something larger than yourself, connected to all other creatures who struggle and grow and learn and love. Your journey, like Luna's, is unique and valuable, full of lessons waiting to be discovered, full of light waiting to be found, not just outside, but within. Let sleep come gently, carrying you into dreams where fireflies dance and rivers reflect starlight, and ancient trees hold space for transformation. Trust that morning will come as it always does, bringing new opportunities for growth and understanding and love. And remember, always remember, you are enough. The end.